is I had a student paint this one for me. Can you see how see-through that glaze is? How you can still see like the color of the clay through it, right here? That's like maybe one layer of glaze. It's not very smooth and shiny, so it won't get glassy and smooth and nice. And you'll be able to see the color of the glaze through it if you don't put enough glaze. It's just not as nice. It's not as food safe that way. We want it to really be sealed well for it to be food safe. So in order to know that it's food safe, we really need that like 2 thicker layers of glaze. So this one has the right amount of glaze on it. Do you see how it's much thicker and smoother and shinier and glassy, and we don't see any of the color of the glaze or the clay through? That's how we know it's food safe, and it feels really smooth. So any roughness that might have been there gets covered up and kind of smoothed over once it goes back in the kiln if it's got enough glaze on it. So that one is food safe, and it's the right amount of glaze. And we know that because we don't see the clay through it, except for like right here, we see a little bit. See that? So we definitely want to make sure we've got the right amount of glaze. Before we open this guy, what do we need to do? Shake it. And once we feel like we've shaken it really well, then we can take that cap off. We can set that cap down. If it's got a little layer here, we can peel this little layer off. And if there's any glaze on that layer, which there should be if you were shaking it really well, we can kind of let that go into the container so we don't waste any, right? And now we're ready to start. I'm gonna start with the outside color. So do you notice how I flipped my pinch pot upside down? It's easier to see that outside instead of kind of having to go down low and look at it from the side. It's easier just to flip it over. The one thing that's tempting when it's flipped over like this though, is to paint the bottom. And what can't we do today? Don't paint the bottom. So when you're ready to start glazing, we want to load the brush up really kind of full with glaze. Not so full that it's dripping all the way back and forth, but like we want a lot of glaze on there and we want to dunk it frequently. So I'm going to load up my brush and I'm going to start by going around the bottom just to remind myself to not paint the bottom. So I do like 3 or 4 blots and then I come back for more. And I do 3 or 4 blots and then I come back for more. We want the glaze to go on fairly thick, but not too thick. So see right here how it's starting to drip a little? That means it's too thick. If it starts to drip, that means you're doing too heavy of a coat. So I've got 2 areas where it's kind of dripping. So if that happens, pay attention for those drips. Actually, I have 3. There's one over here that was sneaky. I'm just gonna get the excess glaze off my brush and I'm gonna come over here and spread that out evenly. See, I'm just taking those drips and spreading them out a little bit. That's what you're gonna do if you start to get drips. And maybe blot a little bit thinner. The reason why we don't want to brush the glaze on, do you see how much thinner it goes onto my piece when I brush? Do you see how we also miss those details if we brush? So if you've got any texture or details in your piece, we need to press it and wiggle the tip of the brush into those little details. See how I've got these little designs that I pressed in? We need to wiggle the glaze into those little spots. If we leave anything without glaze, it will not magically get glaze on it. You need to put glaze where you want it to be. So we're gonna go all the way around, do 1 full layer. You can see how quickly it dries. Wherever it's light right now, that means it's already dry. Wherever it's shiny and a little bit darker, that means it's not dry. So it's gonna dry quick. You'll be able to tell where you started when you get back around and where you need to do that second coat. So once you finish first coat, do a second coat, and then before you move on to the next thing, this is important, get down low and spin it around slowly and just kind of double check. You'll be surprised at how many little nooks and crannies you may have missed that you didn't see because you were only looking at it from one angle. So make sure you get down low and kind of inspect it and look for any spots where the clay is still showing. Fill those in.